Okay, hey there. Welcome to the Ope-Eh three-way. This here is a podcast about three of us here from Northwoods area. Well, more specifically, southeastern Wisconsin and Canada. Three guys who like to talk about wrestling. Starting with myself, kind of doing a little bit of brief intro here. My name's Brandon. I happen to be one of the southeastern Wisconsin boys. Met these two fellas. There's a third fella in there somewhere. Well, she's, off to the side somewhere, just doing the thing. But we all met at WrestleMania, had a few brewskis. Been lifelong fans, all of us. Myself, I've been following wrestling since I was about 9 years old. Had the dream to become one. Didn't do that, so now here I am, sitting making podcasts for all you fine folks. Let's go around table. I said my name was Brandon, right?
You did.
Donny,
you did.
I don't know.
You did say your name.
All right,
gotten
fellas.
that far.
Sweet. Loving it.
Well, would you like to pass it back to Wisconsin or Canada?
Let's go keep it in Wisconsin.
Yeah, let's move it. Let's move it slightly on up.
All right. My name is Pierce. I'm also from southeastern Wisconsin. Been a wrestling fan probably since I was about 7 or 8. I mean, I just adore it. I mean, it's one of the biggest things in my life. Went to WrestleMania and met these guys. Snuck into the VIP of a tailgate, for the first day, and that's how I met the good man from Canada, who I will let him introduce himself in a moment. And then the next day, got free VIP to that tailgate and met Brandon. Despite us living within an hour of each other, we met in right next to the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. How the hell does that happen? But yeah, we had a couple of beers.
North stars aligning.
Had a couple beers and thought maybe let's try out a podcast. We all have fun opinions on wrestling, so we're here for a good time, hopefully a long time.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. I'm Donald. Also, you can call me Donald, Donnie, Don. Just don't call me Ronald. None of that. I'm the guy from Toronto, Canada. So, Big Smoke, Big White North, whatever you want to call it, and
the six.
The six. Yes, I'm not that urbanized, so I usually don't say six. But yeah, it's showing my age here a little bit. But I've been pretty much a lifelong wrestling fan too, in and out at different points in my life, but definitely been back in it pretty heavy for the last few years. Did the last 2 WrestleManias in LA and in Philly, and that's where my partner and I met these two beauties at a tailgate hosted by Mojo Rawley, which was a fun time. And now we're trying out this whole discussion post wrestling shows, seeing what we like, what we didn't like, what comes next, and that's what we're going to do today. It's our first recorded show, and we're going to talk about Money in the Bank 2024 from Toronto, my backyard.
Yeah. Luckily for us, we had a man in the building for the show yesterday. Donnie, what did you think of the show as an in-house fan?
Donnie, how you feeling today?
Oh man, I'm suffering, boys. I'm suffering. I was out with a couple guys I met, just similar to you guys. Just stumbled into a couple guys that we met at a bar. They were from Newfoundland, though, so it was harder for me to understand a bit what they were saying. But I feel like they blend right in with you guys too, honestly enough. But we were having a few drinks, and then we enjoyed the show, and then we had a few more drinks, and I woke up pretty miserable today. But that's all good, man.
No roofies from the Newfies, though.
No roofies from the Newfies. No.
We can safely say no roofies from the Newfies.
The only thing I know about Newfies is from the TV show Shoresy, and one character calls martinis martoonies. And so I would hope those Newfies had a couple martoonies with you.
Oh, they definitely had a couple Marthreesies almost at that point.
Oh.
But how did the show sound? Like the crowd wise, it felt loud in the building. How did it come across?
It sounded loud. It sounded loud. For Orton's entrance, they did have that decibel meter that they started in France on the screen, and it was getting loud when they were singing. So
yeah, they had it for Cena coming out too, and I noticed they kind of brought it up just a little before. So I figured they were trying to kind of prompt the crowd into it, and I can see that being a thing from here on out with larger PLEs and stuff like that, which is fine. But I mean, even unprompted, like you can tell. I mean, it's a Canadian crowd, and as we know, like Canada's very, very passionate about its wrestling. Like they're always
you guys show up
they're
and
always
show
a grateful
out.
community. Oh yeah, you did good there. You did good there, Donnie.
Thanks, boys. We don't get a whole lot out our way. You know, we maybe get a PLE once every 2 years or so. The last PLE we had was Elimination Chamber 2023. That was when Sammy and Roman was the main event, and that was in Montreal.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was Quebec, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's still like a 6-hour drive from where I am. Canada's a big place, so it's always kind of funny when they say on the show, "Oh, they're Canadian, you know," and it's like, "Oh, they're just next door." It's like, you know, they could be like 4,000 miles away and still be in Canada, right? So
I think that's what some people think about the United States as well. They think they could maybe, you know, say you went to WrestleMania in Philly this year, they'd be like, "Oh, well, then after that, I think we're gonna drive down to LA." It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, let me just walk down to Tejas, boys. Yeah.
You could drive for 14 hours in Texas and still be in Texas.
Yep, that's right. Ontario's are one of our biggest provinces, and go to end, it's easily a 14-hour drive, I think. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a big, beautiful province. But yeah, it's glad to hear that you guys thought the show came through okay. The crowd was hyped. We felt hyped. Lots of moments to be hyped. We're going to talk about those today. I guess the first thing we want to do is talk about the show as a whole. How do you guys feel about Money in the Bank 2024?
You know, obviously, I feel like we could be a little biased in saying WrestleMania 40 was the best PLE of the year because we were there. But, I mean, top to bottom, for a 5-match show, this delivered on every account. I'd be willing to say this was probably the best show of the year by far. You know, it seemed that good to me. That might be a biased personal opinion, but it was everything hit for me. There were a couple, issues here and there, but top to bottom, great show.
See, and I feel like I'm a little bit of the opposing opinion on that. See, like I didn't think anything was particularly wrong with Money in the Bank this year. I mean, there was elements that kind of, once you heard certain people say certain things, like, I mean, with Drew kind of calling his shot the way he did, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I feel like that kind of, it set the table for how the show was going to kind of unfold, in my opinion. I mean, it's smart, I think, in any case, to put a Money in the Bank match on first, because then it creates the suspense in any case of, well, when are they gonna cash it in tonight, or like are they gonna cash it in like at the presser? Like, it adds that extra layer of like, when's this gonna happen? But then at the same time too, like with all things considered, I felt like there was a lot in there that kind of, you kind of expect it. Like, I mean, and you could kind of see it early on too, like with Raw, for instance, like as just a very brief tangent, Raw and SmackDown, like the tag titles change hands, and there's kind of what we've been graced with as far as after that happened. I kind of felt like, talking about later on, like the Intercontinental Championship match, like it made a little bit more sense as to why nothing major happened at this show, because we have SummerSlam coming up and that too.
Right.
But I felt like all in all, like the show did well to set the table, to use the analogy again, going forward into the next major PLE. And I feel like it did a good job of showcasing a lot of the talent that were, like, I was very much looking forward to the Money in the Bank ladder matches this year, because I felt like all of the wrestlers in the matches, definitely could have used the showcase and could have, to give something that, the fans can care about and give them reason to invest in them. And yeah, I feel like as we discuss that more, we'll definitely flesh that out. But I feel like the Money in the Bank ladder matches were great. I feel like the 6-man tag did what it needed to do. The Intercontinental Championship match, I might have something to say about that one. That one was
I think we'll have the same opinion, but looking back on it with hindsight now, I think it makes more sense. But we'll get into it once we get into more our in-depth on that specific match.
Sure.
Yep, that sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, being in the house in the show, obviously, it was a very hype, a lot of energy stuff, a lot of stuff that you're not able to take in as easily as when you watch it on TV because you don't have the commentary for it. So we'll get into a couple points on that when we go through. But energy was high, so it felt like it was a good show. I didn't have really any time to read into anyone's thoughts or opinions on stuff, but I do kind of have my own opinions on a couple things. And we'll get to those too. That there was a couple of really good things I think that happened on the show, and a couple of things that kind of made me scratch my head. So we'll get into those as they come, and we're going to start with the first match, which was the men's Money in the Bank match, and that was Drew McIntyre defeating Andrade, Carmelo Hayes, Chad Gable, Jey Uso, and LA Knight. What do you guys think?
So I think you could say that Drew was probably the only choice to win based on his character and his story. When we've been talking, I've been saying that I've been loving Drew's character of being this massive hypocrite. You know, he's been cashed in on twice now. He's said he hates Money in the Bank. He hates the concept. So, of course he was going to win. The only other two viable options, realistically, were probably LA Knight and Jey Uso, but Jey, I don't think he would have fit the briefcase, if you guys know what I mean. LA Knight, you know, maybe you could put it on him, but if he's going to feud with Logan Paul for the foreseeable future over the U.S. title, not necessary for him to have it. Don't need another Miz, Money in the Bank, and U.S. champ run. I mean, how Drew won, though, is probably the most interesting thing, because he straight up lawn darted that ladder. And
I was very sports entertained by that spot. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I was professional wrestling, as we say, because sports entertainment's not a thing anymore.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we got to wean out the old terminology. Duly noted. I personally was really hoping for a dark horse in Andrade to come out and win the Money in the Bank, because I feel like with everything that's going on, like, right, Drew McIntyre, though he won and though he lost, and, you know, obviously with the aftermath of that, it does propel the story forward and it adds new layers to it, new dimension to it. Did it necessarily need it at the expense of, you know, the Money in the Bank concept and, you know, the run that any one of these other guys could have had with it? Probably not. Me personally, for instance, with Andrade, right? Like, and granted, like, he's, I guess, been running his mouth off a little more on social media now about his dissatisfaction with his place in the company, and maybe it would have been wrong to kind of reward him on the heels of that.
That's just how he is, though.
He did that in his first run in WWE. He did that in AEW. Now he's doing it again. Like, yeah. Sometimes you gotta have to accept where you are on the card.
Well, and that just it too. Like, I made a point of it when you had Jey Uso and he's getting the crowd hype. Everybody's literally just lit, and here comes Andrade, and it was so appropriate that he's wearing a black skull on his face because everybody was just dead around him. Like, it was absolutely like radio silence when I'm watching Andrade just walk stiff as a board out to the ring, putting his fist up, trying to get the people involved with him, and like you just cannot be made to care. And I feel like he just kind of, I don't know if it's just his character or if it's just his projection of his dissatisfaction on the card or what, but like, it's just, I feel like besides his obvious talent and his pedigree, it's just really hard to get behind him.
To play devil's advocate for him, since he returned in the Rumble, how much have we really seen of him? He was in that tag team match at Mania. Other than that, he's the Speed Champion right now, correct?
He is the Speed Champion now. He beat Ricochet, yep.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Ricochet, by the way. He's dead.
Yeah. Killed to death by Braun Steiner. Unfortunate circumstances.
He hasn't really been around. He was the right choice to put in the match for good lucha things, and good lucha things happened with him. I mean, that reverse Spanish fly off the ropes onto a ladder. Whew.
Yeah, that was very incredible. Creative. I give him kudos for that. I will, however, say and I've said it to you before too. The stupidest thing he could have done was to step for step set up the exact spot that he had with Balor 5 years ago, the highlight that they had just shown on the pre-show, and like he could have won the match. I mean, he was there, but then you see him like he's the only guy in the ring. He's dinking around. He sets up the crossbar there, and then he waits for who did he powerbomb this year? Was it Chad Gable?
Well, it was Carmelo Hayes.
Or was it Carmelo? It was Mello. Okay.
But the way it was set up was a little different because LA Knight was behind him, and he threw him over Carmelo into the powerbomb. So,
well, but it was effectively the same spot, you know. I mean,
it was effectively the same, but it was different enough to where you could make the argument.
I suppose. I just felt like there was a chance for him to win there, and I feel like that was so obvious to me. And then I see him do that for like no other reason than like the holy shit chance, which he got, you know, fine, whatever. But he lost the match, and now he gets to go back to, you know, maybe the occasional. Is he even dinking around with the Judgment Day anymore? I know, like, there was talk to him in a Judgment Day. He had been around. He had been LWO. Yeah, like LWO and Judgment Day were kind of like talking to him, getting in his ear, and he's like, you know, trying to play it cool, like he don't need either of them. Which I mean is, at this point in his career, I feel like is untrue. But
I think realistically, he needs to just go back to that old La Sombra, you know, to where he's, you know, Los Ingornable, like he was in Mexico in AEW, but show that in WWE.
It's hard to get a gimmick like that over in WWE, though, man. Like, especially because he's not the best on the microphone. And that's not even his fault. It's just like, I think, like, as a whole, a lot of crowds really just can't get into characters where it's hard for them to articulate their story, right? And I think that's been a challenge with him in his first run, and that's why Zelina got strapped with them, and that worked okay, because Zelina's pretty solid at being a mouthpiece. But, like, I don't think he's capable of winning over an audience in the WWE universe just with his wrestling ability. So... Right. Any kind of gimmick that he has going forward, I think he still needs some help.
A mouthpiece would do him wonders.
Yeah, and like we've had this discussion before about different guys and why it's hard for them to get over in WWE, and I've always kind of felt the same way, that because so much of crowd reaction is based off of the storytelling and the charisma that a wrestler has, and less on their actual abilities, that if you don't have that charisma and that storytelling element, you're going to be very hard pressed to have a crowd get behind you. And that's where we kind of are with Andrade. That's kind of still where we are with Carmelo Hayes right now. Like, the crowd wasn't really over on anything that he did very much. And the other four guys, they have story behind them. They have charisma, and that's where a lot more of the investment for the crowd got into.
Right.
Chad Gable, little disappointed that the Wyatts didn't come out for Chad. Little disappointed that LA Knight didn't have, you know, Logan Paul come out. And then we just got Drew kind of just threw a ladder at Jay and won the match, and it was fine. We knew what the purpose of that was, but
right. The only viable winners were realistically Drew, LA Knight, and Jey Uso. You could make a case for Chad Gable, but
any thought of him cashing in the Intercontinental title, I think, was a waste. So, and that's what he said he was going to do, and that was basically a death sentence, I feel.
Nobody should cash in for a mid-card title ever again.
Nope.
You know, people were. I was seeing online people saying that they need to go away from Money in the Bank for a little bit because of what Austin Theory cashing in for that title.
I think we can talk about that and the results of the Money in the Bank a little bit once we get into later in the show, but that's going to be a very good talking point, I think, as we talk about what happened in the World Heavyweight Championship match. But unless you guys want to add a little bit more, we can jump into the next match, or any other last thoughts on the first match of the night.
I mean, I would agree. I wish Carmelo Hayes did a little more. You would think he would have been jumping all over the ring. He really wasn't. Jey Uso and LA Knight had their yeet spot, and it was fine. But as a story, I think they nailed it. But for a Money in the Bank ladder match, I think they could have added a little more. But I do think it was a good match. It was a good start to the show.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like having Drew in there just kind of as a brief talking point, and getting to it later too with the world title match. I feel like having Drew in the Money in the Bank match kind of created a foregone conclusion. So like when when he hooked up the ladder at Jay, like you just knew like nobody else was getting up. Like this was going to be Drew's moment, and he was going to do exactly what he said he was going to do, which happened later in the show. But all in all, yeah. I thought the match itself was really good. I thought the guys got a chance to play around with a few different things. And I feel like Chad Gable got his chance at, playing around with some ladder spots, which was great for him.
I mean, suplex and ladder. That was pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it kind of, speaking specifically briefly to Chad Gable, I feel like it kind of shows that, he belongs with each of the guys in the ring too. Like I feel like he could put on a banger with Drew, with LA Knight, with any of these guys. I'm looking forward to his match with Jay on Monday. That should be a good one. But all in all, yeah, the match itself, not bad. Foregone conclusion, but not a bad match.
Right.
I didn't realize you had a match announced with Jay for Monday. A little bit off topic because it's not about Money in the Bank, but I got to imagine Wyatt Six takes out one of those two definitively on Monday, yeah?
Seems pretty obvious to me.
I would think yes. It's hard to say with what the Wyatt Six are doing. I think maybe at the end of the match, I would assume Jay's winning. It's Jay doesn't lose too often. Maybe we get another VHS, and maybe we see more about the family because these are lost souls.
I don't think we can wait too long with getting one of them in the ring, though. That was a big discussion point when Bray came back. He didn't get his first match for 3 months?
I would assume we see something at SummerSlam.
I would hope so. I feel like they definitively need to show their hand in this match, and whoever it ends up being, like, we got to start building up a match there, because I don't think we should leave them on the back burner too long. It's such a hot start, and I got to imagine they got to get involved in that at some point on Monday.
I would agree.
I concur.
Alrighty. Match number 2. Sami Zayn defeated Braun Breaker for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Braun Breaker had new music. Thoughts on this new theme song?
I mean, it's harkens back to his uncle. I dig it. I like the sirens. I'm a big Papa Pump fan, so I enjoy it. I think it's, Def Rebel is either really good, really bad. This is the first one where I think it's kind of in the middle. But we'll see how crowds react. I don't think anybody, thought they were going to hear sirens. So, Brandon, what do you think?
I mean, I like that they're still trying to experiment with his character, and they're still trying to find something that really works and something that you can immediately identify with Braun Breaker. Because, I mean, the last couple tunes he had just really weren't working it. I was of the impression, and more specifically of the hope, that new music was going to bode well for him, like it did with Roman Reigns. Like when Roman Reigns' music finally changed, and he finally got his head of the table theme when he faced Daniel Bryan, I thought maybe before I was aware of the change, right? I'm like, maybe there's a chance that Bryan, ends this reign before it really gets started. And then the drums hit, and then the choir hits, and I'm like, oh, he ain't got a fucking snowball's chance in hell, It puts you in the mood, and it sets a tone, literally and figuratively, where you think that this guy coming in now, he's of a whole new mindset. He's ascended to like a next level, where he's ready to claim something that belongs to him. He's ready to prove doubters wrong. And with Braun Breaker, this being kind of like his maiden voyage as far as title matches on the main roster anyways. I know he had a world title match with Seth, back in NXT in the Gold Rush, what had to have been a couple of years ago now. And I think that was kind of part of the initiative with him too, just trying to feel him out. Because obviously WWE as a whole, and especially now with Netflix being involved, like they're putting a lot of stock behind Braun Breaker. And it's inevitable that he wins all the titles in WWE, right? Like I feel like he's going to be like one of the figures that WWE posts on for the foreseeable future, for a long time. This first showing though with Braun, I mean, I thought it was weird because for a guy who's, you know, reputedly just so hard hitting and, you know, is supposed to be this beast of a human being, right? This feral dog, this animal, right? I feel like it looked like he was pulling a lot of his punches. And I know there was a spot with Ludwig Kaiser where like he was audibly apologizing for stiffing him a little bit harder than he should have too. And I don't know if like he has a reputation of being a little more stiff where he doesn't need to be, or maybe he's just like saving his tank for a future title match, which I'm sure, right, looking forward to SummerSlam. Like it'll be interesting to see how it develops. But I mean, this can't be the end of the road for Braun Breaker. I'm sure he's going to be right back at Sammy's throat and especially with Sammy's post-show interview with Kathy Kelly, where he's talking about how he basically underestimated Braun Breaker. He survived Braun Breaker. So that I would think would instill confidence in a Braun Breaker to come back at him with a renewed sense of purpose and a slightly different game plan, maybe then just go all out on him. And maybe that's the plan. But I don't know. Like my initial impression was Braun's seems like he's kind of just love tapping him in the gut there. Like he's not given all he can to this match. And I mean, I personally was a little surprised that Sammy did win, right? Like you figure, I mean, Sammy did lose in Montreal, right? His actual hometown. So maybe it wouldn't be a huge loss to him if he were to lose again in Toronto. And it's right. And like Braun had said in previous promos where Sammy basically, I mean, he doesn't need the Intercontinental Championship. Granted, you don't expect the guy who beat Gunther to just up and lose his title, you know, before he gets a good run with it. But at the same time, like, right, like Sammy with the Intercontinental Championship and beating guys like Braun Breaker, I don't know. It's weird because Sammy's one of those guys who is like naturally so easy to get behind and you want to root for him. But it's really hard for me to feel good about Sammy beating Braun in this case because Braun is on such a roll right now. And the Intercontinental Championship, I feel like, is just one of those things that would really solidify him and his spot, you know, on Raw. And Sammy is one of those guys, he's been overdue to chase the world title and really kind of manifest destiny in that regard. He's been that way, I feel, for a long time. I was actually very surprised to see him pursue the Intercontinental Championship back during WrestleMania season. I figured at some point in the last year or so, he would have been world title bound, maybe had a good match with Seth or a program with him, something to that effect. Yeah, like Sammy in the Intercontinental Championship scene still beating guys like Braun Breaker who have such upside. I mean, he's just one of many guys coming in who have immense upside, but for him to go over Braun the way he did was kind of like, I don't know. It was weird, I guess.
So this is where I was thinking, you know, with hindsight, it kind of makes sense because the whole point of the Sami Zayn character, as soon as you hit that 10-minute mark and you haven't put him away, he's gonna find a way to sneak the win out, you know, be it with, you know, a roll up, his finisher, whatever. The whole reason he beat Gunther was because he could not go down. It's the whole I'm the underdog. Even if he's champion, if you know, he just doesn't lose at a certain point. You have to put him down within this certain time frame, otherwise he will find a way to win. And that's kind of what happened here. You know, I was hoping Braun would win, but I think waiting to crown him and giving Sammy's reign just a little more juice, because, you know, you beat the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, and you just have, you know, I think his reign, it said it was 90 days. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. That's a short reign to go off a 666-day reign, you know. why would you want to waste it on something like that? And so doing it from, even though you could make the argument that Money in the Bank is really one of the big four versus against Survivor Series now, and waiting till SummerSlam, which is the second biggest show of the year, it makes more sense. And honestly, I'm not saying this will happen. I think Braun just destroys him at SummerSlam. They don't need to have a 20-minute classic. I think they should, have Braun go straight murder hobo on everybody till he gets that title shot again.
He did lose clean.
I don't disagree with you.
He did lose clean, so that's it's gonna have to be. I don't know how they're gonna have to build Braun to be a monster again to give him another shot right away because he did lose clean.
But with that, at the end of the match, they did show Braun on ringside just with this, face of anger, like, how did this happen? What the hell? So I think they'll build him back up. I mean, God knows what's going to happen with Adam Pierce, because now he's got to deal with him getting hit by Drew, which we'll talk about in a bit here.
Yeah, we'll get to there too.
But, one of the biggest thorns in the side of Adam Pierce has been Braun Breaker, because he's just been murdering people. So I think the match is very good. It was a good showcase for Braun, and Sami did enough to pull out a victory, and that's kind of the whole thing with Sami Zayn. So,
yeah, it was a fine match. Not great, not bad. Fine. It did what it needed to do. Sami retains. We'll see what happens.
It's one of those things too, and I mean, kind of when you said it, you said it right. We'll see what happens, and I feel like, in my opinion, I don't know. It's one of those matches where, like, on one hand, yeah, you absolutely could have made the case that, like, this is a match that we can wait till SummerSlam to do the title change. But at the same time, too, I just hope that it's not a microcosm of a broader trend in the WWE now. And I mean, with Roman's reign and everything, and with Seth Rollins being the world champion on Raw for a year, like, it's good to have, consistent world champions. It's good to have consistent champions in general. It's not like the Attitude Era was, where, like, you could count on, the WWE Championship or the Intercontinental Championship flipping hands like every 2 weeks on some random SmackDown or Raw or what have you. But at the same time, too, my hope is that, like, we don't have to be like, well, we'll see how it goes, and then, always have to expect title changes to happen on, like, the bigger PLEs, like SummerSlam, like WrestleMania in particular. Like, I think of Roman's reign, and everybody pretty much unanimously agreed, like, that was going to end at WrestleMania. And my hope for, like, going forward is, even like with the smaller champions, like, right, like the Intercontinental Champion or the United States Champion, not getting in my hope is we don't get in the habit of just being like, oh, well, these title changes are only going to happen on the big shows, right? Because then I feel like that gets rid of some of the incentive to attend and to buy shows like Money in the Bank, shows like even Bad Blood, something that they're bringing back. Like, I mean, it kind of would operate. You think about, you got Crown Jewel that's going to be coming up just after. You have Survivor Series, I believe, that's going to be happening shortly after that, if I'm not mistaken. I believe Survivor Series is around Thanksgiving time.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of demerits the shows a little bit when, and we're still pretty new into this whole, like, Triple H era of booking things and of structuring things. So my hope is that going forward, like, through to WrestleMania next year, like, we're not all saying like, oh, like, yeah, we knew this title change was going to happen, like, at SummerSlam, like Logan Paul, LA Knight. Like, I think that's the thing too, is like, everybody, you could have easily put LA Knight, Logan Paul at Money in the Bank based on the build that we had over the last couple of weeks. But I feel like they want it in SummerSlam, not just because it's, like, in Logan's hometown, right, of Cleveland, Ohio, but also for the fact that it's SummerSlam, and now we can just expect all the title changes to happen at SummerSlam. Like, so now we're gonna, kind of pigeonhole people into just going to the PL. I don't know. I guess in my mind, like, I just don't want it to, before I get onto a big old rant about it, I don't want to see.
Stay on subject a little here, but I do want to agree with you. I'm just looking at some old cards. And last few B-list shows, Clash of the Castle, we had one title change, and that was the women's tag team titles, which, let's be honest, are not the most important titles. Backlash in
the
France.
hometown girls too.
Backlash in France, no title change. Elimination Chamber in Perth, no title change. And it's like, how are we going to keep having these, B-list PLEs and nothing happens? Like, what's the incentive of going to these shows if, like, yeah, you might get a pop of somebody coming back or somebody interfering or whatever, but, like, it's not good value to go to these B shows if you're not going to see a title change.
Right.
So I think you're definitely.
I agree with that.
I'm going back even further here. I'm not counting the Saudi shows as B shows, but the last one before that was Asuka beating Bianca Belair for the women's title at Night of Champions 2023. So, like, there's not very many title changes at these B shows. So you're definitely onto something there.
But if we notice one thing with Triple H is he does like long-term booking, which is, I would say better than the off-the-cuff shit that Vince McMahon was doing. I mean, but I agree we should see the B shows, something should happen at them. But I also see the other side where, we don't need year-long champions, but champions should hold on to the belt for a good amount of time. So it's hard to say, You
got 9 titles on the main roster. Not that hard to have, an average of 1 title change per show.
Sure.
Between the 9 titles, it's not crazy. There you got 2 sets of men's, 2 sets of women's. 2 sets of men's being the main titles, 2 mid cards, 2 women's, 3 tag team titles, right? So in some context, you should probably have some level of activity on those. And yeah, you want the long reigns, but if everybody has a long reign, then it's like, what are we doing to get other people to the top of the card, right? If they're just going to be fodder. Like, that was one of the biggest, I don't think it was founded, but biggest criticisms with Roman's reign was like, who are you building out of all of this, right? And obviously you got main event Jey Uso, he got built, but not much more beyond that.
Right.
And if you're just going to be feeding the top of the card to have these long, prestigious reigns, like, what benefit are you having guys down the road? I don't know. But any last thoughts?
Makes sense.
On Sami and Braun before we move to the biggest surprise of the evening?
I mean, one thing that I did notice is when Braun went over the announce table, it looked like he may have tweaked his knee. Let's hope he's okay. He could have just been selling, but it's hard to say what happens for real in WWE.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like segueing just into the next match when you talk about long-term booking. I feel like this match coming up that we're going to talk about was just the epitome. Like, it did so many things right. There were so many really good callbacks within the next match, within the Damian Priest Seth Rollins match, later to be Damian Seth Rollins Drew McIntyre match featuring CM Punk. Like, I feel like there were just a lot of good things in there that will really push a lot of good things going through, I think, all the way through to WrestleMania next year.
We got one thing to talk about before that, though, and that was Trish Stratus, who was host of Money in the Bank, coming out and introducing John Cena, which was a big shock for us in attendance. There was they had the normal John Cena merch in the stands. There was nothing obvious to say that he would be there. And he announced, at least there was some clarification of this apparently in the post show, but he announced in the ring that he is on his retirement tour. And initially what he said was Royal Rumble is going to be his last Royal Rumble. Elimination Chamber is going to be his last Elimination Chamber. And WrestleMania 41 is going to be his last WrestleMania.
Yeah, the clarification is that it's not he's done at WrestleMania. He's going to go throughout 2025. 2025 is his last year as an in-ring competitor.
Yeah, somebody said like 30 or 40 appearances, something along those lines.
And that's quite a bit for him. I mean, last year we got lucky because of the writer's strike, so he was on TV for, 4 straight months?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's time, but man, my childhood, part of it died yesterday because he was my guy. So, congratulations to John Cena.
What a privilege, though, just to be able to have this chance to let everybody know that, like, this is the last run. Because how many times have we been, how many times, like, for instance, like with Kurt Angle's comeback, right? Like, his announcement of retirement came pretty close to when it actually had occurred. With Cena being as big as he is, like with as many fans as he had, and like you were saying, Pierce, like with as many childhoods as he defined by being who he was, right? And for someone like me, even who like just hated the shit out of the guy, and just the Super Cena run for me was just like the bane of like my fandom. But then, later on in his career, when he's creeping up on his like 15th and 16th world championships, and he's having these great matches for the U.S. championship and really just elevating that title and everybody we had matches with. It's going to be so great just to be able to watch him wrestle, because I never really had much of a chance to. Like, it was just situations and circumstances surrounding it where I never really got to see a big Cena match. But to be able to have the chance one last time to really appreciate just what, like, do you even call him, like, right, Triple H is trying to find the word, like, legend, icon, like, what really encapsulates John Cena? Like, he is his own mountain. Like, Mount Rushmore doesn't even really, I don't think it works for him. I feel like John Cena is like an Everest unto himself, like with everything he's accomplished, with the way he represented the company in a really low spot. And, for later on in his career, which I feel like was him kind of responding to his naysayers, like busting out the new moves and putting people over in places, and especially like Roman Reigns, like for better or for worse, like it's going to be crazy. And I feel like every appearance he makes is going to be special going forward.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm exaggerating too much here, but I think he's the greatest face of all time. Like, as a like, for the company, for WWE, for wrestling, there's no greater face. And some of that came with some negativity, the Super Cena that you were talking about, like, the crowd reactions at times where just people weren't buying into it because it was too much. But, push comes to shove, like, that guy had great stories, solid match card for years and years. He had some great matches that a lot of people, don't give him enough credit for, I think.
No.
And just like the human being that John Cena is, like the work that he did for Make-A-Wish for over a decade, like this guy, there's nobody close to doing the amount of Make-A-Wish wishes being granted as John Cena. Like, I think he has something over like 1,000 of them. It's absurd. Like, this guy, he came from nothing and became a legend. And he did so much for other wrestlers, and he did so much for other people. And he's ready to do it again one more time. He's ready to give back to other wrestlers, build some new stories. And it's going to be real sad to see him go. But I'm glad that they're announcing it now, drawing it out, so that people know they have one more chance to see a legend.
Right. I mean, I would agree. He's probably, I mean, when WWE has its face of WWE, or, your top superstar, I mean, Hogan was for the 80s, for the most part, for most of the 80s, a little bit in the 90s. Bret Hart's run was only 3-4 years. Stone Cold was only on top for 3 years. The Rock was only there for 3 years. John did it for 15 years?
Yep.
Like, it's an unprecedented run.
Him and Taker are the two longest lasting guys with such star power to them. And I guess you can put Rey Mysterio in there too, because that guy's been around forever. And, but
I mean, as soon as he, stepped back from the main event scene, he made the U.S. title feel special again, and it hadn't felt special in 10 years, something like that, maybe. I mean, the U.S. Open
on WWE TV, right? Like
the U.S. Open Challenge was probably the best in-ring run I've seen in his career, and then his stuff with AJ Styles. Him giving back the way he did when he did not need to. He could have just walked to the sunset 10 years ago, and he's been still around for 10 years. And so hats off to him finding the time to call it a career and continue to move forward. And I mean, I hope we see him. No, but I mean, chances are he's the headliner next year, but it's really up to John.
Yeah, I feel like he's got to be the headliner for Hall of Fame in Vegas. I don't see how it could be anybody else.
Unless Batista can make an appearance, but I mean, maybe you put those two together.
For 5 years.
I mean, his schedule is even crazier than John's.
Yeah, so, wrestling's not a priority to him like as much as it is to John. So, right. And that's totally fine.
Yeah, I feel like Cena's time is now, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, as far as the build-up. I feel like, and that's the thing too, like, and I feel like we could honestly spend like a whole episode just kind of speculating about what this next year is going to look like for John, like, because I really wanted to talk about with you guys, like, what do you think's going to look, who do you think's going to induct him into the Hall? Like, who has the best case for that? You can even make a top 5 and really, you can recap a career based on, like just what's going to happen with him in the next couple of, months here. But I mean, man,
that's a whole episode.
We can do that another time, boys. We can definitely talk about doing that when we got some time.
But I don't.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Do you guys have anything else, or should we go on to the next match?
I think we're good. We're good to go to the. If there was like, I'm going to say this right now, a main event that wasn't the main event, it should have been the main event. Donny Priest defeated Seth freaking Rollins and Drew McIntyre. This should have been the main event. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't understand why this was not the main event. I'm gonna hate on this a little bit more once we get to the actual main event, but this should have been the main event. I don't get it. Really disappointed that this was in the middle of the card. But anybody?
I can understand that. I think it would. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, and not to expand on it too much because I don't want to, like, but I feel like ironically, the match did more to highlight CM Punk versus the other 3 guys who were directly involved in the match, and it happened in sequence, right? Like, you had Damian and Seth, who I felt like definitely, like, we're going from like 0 to 60. They were cranking on all cylinders the whole match, and then the freak kick out, non-kick out happens.
They did Damian dirty there. They did Seth dirty there. That was rough.
I feel like that was a production goof again, because it stands to reason. I don't know how they didn't haul the dudes who fucked up the pre-show so bad. I don't know how they didn't just haul them out of the truck right then and there. But there was, my thoughts was that was another production issue. Like, I know in the poster, like, Triple H was talking about, well, it was a referee issue, and I don't know, like, just something about that. It was kind of seemed like it was going to be one of those situations like where Sting was coming out in Survivor Series that one year, where it's mid count and then you don't get all the way to the end because suddenly the lights go black or the music hits or something like that. That's what I feel like was supposed to happen.
Right.
But it was just a terrible botch all around, and everybody caught it, which was the worst part, because as soon as the 3 count hit, the crowd just erupted, and it wasn't like the kind of eruption where it's like, like they were pissed at the result. Like, they knew what happened. Like, it was obvious for everyone to see and hear, and like, oh, it was just so painful. And I wish they panned in closer on Drew's face just to kind of see, like, and just to read his mind through what his face was saying as he's just walking out there. I feel like awkwardly to cash in that briefcase. Like, I feel like Drew got gypped out of that really bad too. Like, right. Again, going back to the Money in the Bank match, foregone conclusion, this was going to happen, but like, it just, I felt like it was just so awkward, boys. Like,
right. That definitely sucked. And the match itself was fucking great. I did not expect them to go as fast as they did, but they had the urgency because Drew said, I'm going to cash in. tonight if I win the briefcase. So they just adding that, those extra stakes. Let's get in, get out of here. The botch really sucked. It's hard to say whose fault it was. I would agree that it was probably a production botch because I would think that the music was supposed to hit at 2.5, and then you have 0.5 seconds for Damien to kick out. That's the tiniest window of time possible, so it's terrible. But as soon as Drew comes out, everybody starts freaking out, and then CM Punk comes in, and Drew was a giant hater this year, but I think CM Punk is now definitively hater of the year. The vitriol.
One thing I really liked about that interaction was post-match, like seeing how pissed off Seth Rollins was at CM Punk. And we know, I don't know if you guys watched the Behind the Curtain documentary, but they had already said that we were supposed to get Punk versus Seth night 1 at Mania. Yep. And that didn't happen, obviously, because Punk got injured. And now with so much heat between Punk and Drew, that probably got a bit forgotten. But Seth brought it back and kept him being relevant, at least in that moment when he walked up to Punk after the match and he was pissed. And I think that was probably one of the best takeaways you could have from that, is because I don't know how you keep Seth Rollins relevant now. He can't defend for the title. He can't challenge for the title again while Damien is champion, which may or may not be much longer, but nevertheless. And now he can't really feud with Punk because Drew has more reason to, but it still gives you that little bit of okay, well, maybe Seth can still get involved in some sort of Punk-Drew feud with his reaction the way that it was. I don't know if they will. More for him otherwise right now, so.
I thought, like I was saying earlier, I felt like there was a lot of cool callback to WrestleMania Night 2 where, you look at Damian Priest ending the match with South of Heaven the same exact way he did on Night 2. Except, Punk had obviously done his fair share to soften McIntyre up, bashed him over the face with something, this time being the World Championship, the thing that Punk's been trying to keep away from Drew McIntyre this whole time. You have Punk sitting at the announce table, albeit on the announce table, kind of the way that McIntyre was when he crept up to Punk the first time, leading up to the cash-in. And then, after the match is all said and done, after Seth realizes what happened and he realizes that Punk is to blame, he's creeping up on the opposite side. And maybe this is just my brain just, nitpicking weird little shit, but I liked the little visual cues of Punk walking or Seth walking kind of from the opposite side that McIntyre did after McIntyre had initially won the championship and wanting to rub that in Punk's face. But now you have Seth coming from the opposite side, kind of renewing the tension that was there, that was meant to be manifesting at Night 2 of WrestleMania. And with very valid, it's stuff that was in place before, but now you've compounded it because Punk has now effectively screwed Seth Rollins just as much as he screwed McIntyre. And nobody necessarily believes that Damian Priest is going to be coming out victorious at SummerSlam when he faces Gunther. But it's still the premise of it. CM Punk has screwed Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins now has not just as much reason, but he certainly does have a very valid reason to pursue and to beat the literal shit out of CM Punk in a way that I'm sure Drew McIntyre had only started to feel months ago, but now has just been, increasingly more so ever since. And that's hard too, because now Rollins is no longer, at least for a little bit, Rollins is nothing to worry about as far as the title goes. So then do you have him just focus all this vitriol on Punk? And then how do you juggle that with Drew McIntyre? Because Drew McIntyre, as we saw in the post show, he is way past boiling. This dude is scalding. And the blow off at SummerSlam is going to be huge. It's going to be the start of something. I don't think this is going to be a one and done kind of match. It's not going to be a one and done kind of feud, but that's the challenge and that's the trick. How do you factor Seth Rollins in there? He has every bit of reason to want to go after Punk as McIntyre would. it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But again, yeah, I thought it was really cool that you had all the same pieces in play last night that you did at WrestleMania night 2. Only there was some slight variation, but it did create impact. And then also, for Damian Priest, because, now Priest is still Judgment Day for now, but he also, Punk basically helped him get a win. And Priest is on this kick of, I need to prove people wrong. I need to prove I can stand on my own.
And now he's done it twice.
Right. With Punk kind of sticking his nose in things and creating this opportunity for Damian to capitalize, which he did, and who wouldn't, but Priest is still on this mission of proving himself and trying to be apart from the Judgment Day in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see how Priest reacts to Punk's interference as well.
Damian Priest still hasn't won clean, right? Since he's been champion, none of his matches he's won clean.
No. Not that I can recall, no.
Yeah. It doesn't do him a whole lot of favors. As much as he's had good quality matches and he's been a very serviceable world heavyweight champion, he's not getting any favors here by constantly winning because other people get involved. It's not even Judgment Day a lot of the time. It's just Punk getting his self involved, and it doesn't make Damian look that great, in my opinion. But we kind of needed this story to happen this way. We're not surprised that Drew was cashing in. He said he was going to. Not surprised that CM Punk screwed him. Little bit surprised that there was no Judgment Day out there, considering their backstage that they had beforehand, where he said he didn't want their help, and Finn. I couldn't hear what Finn said because it was live and hard to hear, but didn't seem like he was too thrilled.
He said, "Whatever you say, boss."
Yeah.
So Finn's starting to get more and more heat. Damian's trying to run things, and this was a perfect match for story building. You have so many little things that happen here. Now you have Damian going straight to Gunther, and now you have Seth pissed at some guy he already hates in CM Punk. You have Drew. Drew and Punk is the best feud of the year, and they haven't even had a single match.
I think this has been going on since
this has been going on since Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
and usually you get something like this, you start to, people start to get bored of it, but this is just continue to get better and better in my eyes.
CM Punk and Drew McIntyre should be the main event for SummerSlam. I know there's going to be obviously other title matches and stuff that are going to happen. We'll probably have some title changes there, but
I'll agree to disagree on that once we get to.
Yeah, the main event might change some opinions on that, but we good to move on to the next one, or?
I think so.
Yeah, no.
Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Tiffany Stratton defeated Chelsea Green, Io Sky, Lyra Valkyria, Naomi, and Zoe Stark.
Match started a bit rough. Couple iffy spots there. Zoe brained herself on that ladder. That did not look great.
I was very scared.
Out there. Oh boy, Zoe was not doing herself any favors out there.
After that first rough little bit, it really started getting good. That was one of the more brutal MITB matches I think I've ever seen. All those women deserve their props.
Yeah, for the women especially, they all 6 of them I thought did very well. The awkward spots were the awkward spots, but that ending with Chelsea, someone was going through those tables, but man, that was a hell of a bump she took going off that ladder.
Into 2 different tables on the outside. She took it. It looked great.
Too, Tiffy. And Tiffany helped her set those up too. It just throws her right down. It was most shocking
from
betrayal
the Sasha Banks betrayal school right there. That spot with Io and Zoe with a tombstone onto a ladder was insane. it just seemed like they just wanted to say, hey, look, we can do this as good as the guys, and we can do better than the guys. I think they showed that 100%, and the right person won. I know you could make an argument for Chelsea Green, but Tiffany, I think, is the best choice for that briefcase.
The whole story laid out in my head, Pierce. Chelsea was the girl. My opinion.
I know.
But so heartbreaking. No, it's Tiffany Stratton. I mean, right. Tiffany Stratton, in any case, if she wasn't going to win Money in the Bank, she would have. I feel like she's one of those who, like, right, is like Braun Breaker. Like, even if there was a setback now, they're guaranteed greatness later. Like, the Money in the Bank, I feel like, is up Tiffany's alley for sure. I was pretty miffed about it to start because, right, I was such a Chelsea fanboy on this, but now looking back, like, I feel like there's a lot they can do with Tiffany leading up to her eventual cash in. I feel like she's going to continue the trend personally of cashing in and winning because, like Braun, I feel like Tiffany is somebody who WWE is getting behind full gear. Like she's comfortable behind a microphone, and she proved that in her segment with Trish too. Like a little nervous, but I mean, obviously Trish being her idol and stuff, it was weird. It was kind of like it was kind of like like I'm you, but from the future kind of thing. And
right.
I mean, it was, and right. I mean, I've said too, Tiffany does remind me a lot of like Trish Stratus, but like Tiffany starting in her career where Trish kind of ended, like, just the athleticism and the comfort with character. And I think WWE seeing that and being like, okay, you're the one to kind of take this thing forward. Obviously so athletically gifted, but yeah, I felt like she definitely carried herself well in the match. That swanton spot on the other girls was insane.
They caught her. Thank God. I just think back of that match at Stand and Deliver where those women didn't catch her. And I'm glad they caught her because, man, that was Stand and Deliver in LA, that ladder match that opened the show. And none of those girls caught her. And oh, man, thank goodness they caught her there.
That's kind of what put a taste in my mouth. I'm like, oh, God, please don't let us see a repeat of that. Like,
right.
It's already bad enough that Zoe domed herself,
Right, and I mean, it seemed like she was fine. She took that spot from. She was the one who got pile driven through that ladder by EO.
Yep.
Talk about Zoe?
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
So, I mean, if she was messed up, she probably would not have been in that position for that. So, I thought Naomi's, like, split-legged DDT that she did was really cool. Lyra looked really good. I mean, that tarantula German suplex was great. But, yeah, I think the right person won, and, just me saying this, let her hold the briefcase for a bit. We do not need the women's briefcase to be done after a day or a month. The only one that's gone longer than a month was Carmella when she won it originally. Let her hold the briefcase for a bit and, let it simmer. I know we just had a super long Money in the Bank winner with Damien, but the women haven't had one for 5 years now? Every other one was within 2 hours or a day. So let's let her sit with the briefcase for a bit.
Especially considering we have Queen of the Ring match to look forward to with Nia Jax taking her opportunity with Bayley. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any dynamic with that involved now that Tiffany is Money in the Bank and that she's kind of paired herself with Nia.
Right.
And I mean, I've said it before. I feel that Nia is the shoe-in to win at SummerSlam, and we can talk about that at a different point. But when you consider the ramifications with Nia potentially winning the championship, and then Tiffany kind of just being in the shadows and aligning herself with Nia, and I agree with you all 110% on that, Pierce. I feel like this run with Money in the Bank should be lengthy, but how long do you have the women's champion and the women's Money in the Bank winner operating side by side without there being too much friction,
Right. Right. I agree.
Tiffany to be a face. I mean, taking out Nia makes the most sense.
Right.
Crowd loves her.
I mean, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That's the way I heard it.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one? On the Money in the
cash
Bank?
in on Raw at all? Do you don't think? Like we know we're inevitably going to get Liv versus Rhea at some point. You don't see her cashing in on the Raw side at all?
No, I think she's gonna stay on SmackDown. I mean, she said in her post thing, the press conference, that she's on SmackDown and that's what she's focused. So,
I mean, I feel like it'd be interesting to see her cash in on Raw. Like it would throw like it would make for a less than obvious conclusion with the Liv Rhea rivalry. I mean, that rivalry should absolutely play out, but I feel like if you throw Tiffany in there, and right, she's dating Ludwig, right? So if she happened to just shift over to Raw, because she certainly could be on Raw too. She, like Braun, and I keep comparing her to Braun, but like she is definitely one of those personalities and one of those types where if you're going into a Netflix deal, I feel like for the women's side of things, Tiffany is unique, and I feel like she's somebody you want to showcase on a new network with a new kind of setup. And right, she'd be with Ludwig over on Raw, who I can't see going anywhere because I mean, and Ludwig is developing in and of his own self too, kind of apart from Gunter. I feel like it would make for interesting TV. I feel like it would be an interesting kind of switch from what you can kind of expect. You know, like if she were to cash in on Nia, which I mean, not necessarily set in stone that Nia would win, but I mean, right, we're talking like within my mind, like a 90% percentile of that happening. But I feel like you could rule it either way. I mean, I personally would love to see Tiffany on Raw cashing in for the women's world title. I think Raw is a good place for her. I think she'd fit right in. Yeah, I could see it going either way, frankly.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see what happens. I think we're all in agreement on the long reign, and we'll see. But the right person won. Match was entertaining. Women all busted their asses, which is what we want to see when we watch those matches.
Right.
Main event time.
The new bloodline.
Let's hear it, Donnie.
Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, and Tama Tonga defeated Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. Solo pin Cody. Where are we at with this one, boys?
100% the right call for Solo to pin Cody. I've been saying that for a while. If they want to build Solo as the new head of the table, the tribal faker, whatever you want to call him, and build to a Solo Roman match, this is how you do it. The match was fun. I hope Tonga Loa is okay. He rung his bell. I mean, he hit the back of that table pretty damn bad.
Yeah, he took a bump.
That just his bell
a
has
low
to
blow
be
too. Like he really screwed up that low blow.
hit him in the asshole, and then the balls.
Yeah, but hopefully he's okay. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. But
I know Fatu is your guy, Brandon. I think they showed him to be a beast in this match. I mean, his introduction match is a main event in a pay-per-view, and the only other person who have done that, I believe, is Goldberg. And that's pretty nice air to be around for a debut,
Logan Paul.
Was Logan Paul in the main event when he debuted?
Oh, he did main event. No, that's true. You're right. What? And I'm trying to think, was there any others that were in a main event? I guess not.
I think it's just Goldberg at Backlash 03.
I'd have to think about that. I feel like that's not an exclusive club for Jacob Fatu. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like what they wanted to do, though, with like, I think about, initially I was kind of miffed because I think I expected a little bit more out of Fatu. I mean, coming from like MLW and having done what he had done for as long as he had done for that company, and then coming into WWE, I felt like it would have been a pretty clean transition, and I feel like it would have been easy for him to just kind of like what he had done in his like actual, like his first appearance, right? Like just running roughshod on everybody And he kind of did it. I mean, he had spots where, like, obviously, like, that whisper in the wind was just absolutely
was insane,
nuts. And, like, the scary thing is he was capable of doing that when he was like 50, 60 pounds heavier too. Like full force Jacob Fatu, like emphasis on Fat, but like, man, that boy can fly for his size. And I feel like it's great because you have him in such great shape now. And the company's obviously super high on him. Like I said, Corey Graves would not stop dick riding this dude. For like he's not even in the match yet. He's just chilling on the sidelines, and Corey Graves is like, oh, but Jacob Fatu, he's this criminal. Jacob Fatu, they had to talk to the Canadian government to get him across the border. That's what we're dealing with here. Which categorically was true, right? Like he's a felon.
Yeah,
right?
It's tough to get Jay across the border. They had to probably really pull some strings to get Fatu out there. And I mean, I think he looked really well. I mean, his first spot showed that, yeah, he's a wild man and will make mistakes. He dove headfirst into the ropes and got caught with the hanging DDT from Randy Orton. But unlike everybody else, he was up in about 2 seconds and was not down for the count compared to everybody,
The trickiest part with his debut, I think, and not being his first match, I do think it was a bit just like, I don't think it was intentional that he was in the main event. It's just coincidence that his first match happens to be a main event, whereas like with Goldberg, going back to that was definitely more intentional. But
right
with Fatu, it's like they know what they have in him, and they know that he's extremely talented, but they still have to do the job of getting Solo Sikoa to be the guy who's the most impactful, right? Because they had to have that moment where he pins Cody, so that it sets up the match for SummerSlam, and they had to do
come back. That should main event SummerSlam if Roman comes back. If he doesn't, CM Punk and Drew 100%. If Roman's back.
I didn't think of that, but I guess that does make sense with Roman. If Roman comes back at SummerSlam, then yes, that would be a good reason for it to be the main event. I don't want to see Solo Sikoa in the main event of SummerSlam, man. Like, I like him. I think a lot of the hate that he gets is unfair, but that's your second biggest show of the year, and Solo Sikoa being in the main event is hard for me to really get into.
Right, and I see where you're coming from, but him pinning Cody here, he's now one of 5 since Cody's come back, and I think that's as good a reason as any to get him at least the title shot.
I mean, I feel like this match in so many ways did what it's set to do. Like with everything that they've been trying to do with Solo to kind of make him the unquestioned, undisputed leader in the bloodline. They removed Jimmy. They removed Paul Heyman. They got him these crazy new vignettes that have him actually talking and expanding on himself and his character, and like really just getting you a sense of like who he is. And then when you see like the loyalty that these guys have to, and I've said it, like any one of those 3 guys who are following in Solo right now in the bloodline, I feel like they could eat him alive if you put them one-on-one with him. Because in my mind, Solo is still like little mini Rikishi, Umaga fusion coming out of NXT, fresh out with the North American Championship. And he was, lugging around with Roman being his enforcer. And gradually over time, you start to see Solo develop this agency where like, and at WrestleMania, right, I feel like being kind of, the emphasis in WrestleMania where he's actually like screaming at Roman, like, finish the job. And there's this killer instinct that's starting to come out of him. And right. And you go back to like the beginning where the elders had sent him. Right. And you think that maybe there's a reason for all of this. And maybe it was predetermined that Solo get to where he is now from the very beginning. But
there is a promo that you can find where Roman said, when I'm done as head of the table, it's Solo. He was the tribal heir, as they call him. So Solo, instead of waiting for his time, taking it, I think is a very, very cool angle to go with.
Yeah. That clip from Mania is actually a really great point that you brought up, because that moment when they did the spike and spear and Cody kicked out, that was a very good call out there. That it was Solo who was pissed off at Roman for not getting back on him and finishing the job, right? So good element that they add there that you highlight there that kind of shows like, and it was in his promo on Friday night. Now we're going to probably see it more going into SummerSlam, but like he has that killer instinct that he's saying that Roman doesn't have. So
right, it's a hunger that Solo has in character where like Roman knows what it's like to be on top. He's been on top and he's been fighting critics and all this stuff, and he's maintained the spot. But like Solo is coming from a different spot where like now he's beneath Roman, and he's brothers with the Usos, and he's got all this stuff. He's in the same family, and he's being positioned for greatness, but he's got so many doubters. And now, with this match where him beating Cody kind of puts an end to a lot of the doubt that people are throwing on him. And I mean, I feel like it did what it needed to do as far as like solidifying him as a potential threat for Cody's title reign, if not solely by himself. If he's not flying solo, then like throwing the elements of Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga and Tongalo in there. Like, what's that going to look like?
We could be seeing the debut of Hikuleo coming in up soon. Zilla Fatu could come in. The Bloodline story just been going on for 4 years, still getting more and more and more layered.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to Kevin and Randy?
Let Kevin go be with his mom and keep him away from the Bloodline. He's been fighting the Bloodline since it began.
Yeah, and Kevin. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Bob.
No, it's just let him go be with his mom. Prayers to his mom. Hopefully she keeps fighting, gets out of the hospital, and everything's okay with her. Randy, I mean, you could put Randy against anybody. Maybe he goes back to Carmelo because Carmelo saying, "Oh, I pinned Randy Orton." Put him in a showcase match with Carmelo at SummerSlam or something. But also Randy was been looking at the title a lot, so could pivot that way and turn him heel.
Yeah, I mean Kevin, and you can make the point for Kevin taking time off, even from a storyline or a kayfabe standpoint. Dude just looked weathered out there to me. Like I feel like I don't know if it just happened overnight or what, but Kevin's just been like putting in a lot of gray hairs in that beard, man, and he just standing there staring the way he did down at the Bloodline. Like it's like a focus. It comes off like killer intent, but like it also I feel like it's just like, fuck, I gotta do this again. Just pure exhaustion from fighting the Bloodline and from coming up short so many times and so many manifestations of the Bloodline. I feel like this would be...
Let him take a break.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a good a time as any for Kevin to just be like, time out. Like, I'm going to take a break from all of this. Like, I need to attend to personal matters. And then bring him back with like I don't know, like how you incorporate him with like all the stuff going on. Like, no matter what, like he's probably going to be Bloodline focused. I don't think he's going to be going for any titles anytime soon. But like, bring him in with like a renewed vigor. Like, let him chill. Bring him back. Maybe he gets a match with like Jacob Fatu or something like that. Like, and I've said like Kevin Owens as he is right now to me is just like he's weathered and he's been through the ringer. And you got Jacob Fatu coming in strong like this new just monster. The way that Kevin Owens kind of was when he debuted back in NXT, and the way he was back in like his heyday when he was having ladder war with El Generico, God rest his soul wherever he is. Back in ROH.
He's at the orphanage again. You don't got to worry about him. He's okay.
Oh, he resurfaced?
He's still... God bless him. He retired to the orphanage.
Oh, I thought he was dead. Oh,
no,
God bless him.
El Generico is alive and well.
Oh, thank God. Yeah. Regular philanthropist, that guy. We all miss him.
Him at the comedy show, by the way. Just a random thing. I was at Sammy's comedy show on Thursday, which was a lot of fun, but there was only a bit of an allusion to El Generico. His name was not stated, and there was no like advanced storyline element to El Generico there. Only alluded to on the Thursday night. Just figured I'd chime in on that.
That's awesome.
But that's
I
the
mean-
card, right? Match was fine. The Bloodline had to win to have any sort of credibility, and Solo pinning Cody, that gets you your WWE Championship match at SummerSlam now.
Right. Which is not anything that anybody thought was going to happen. I think everybody assumed that it was going to be Randy Orton versus Cody at SummerSlam. I'm kind of happy they're pumping the brakes on that, because they can do that anytime. And let's see, Solo's getting a huge test. And I mean, he was just given one of the biggest, okay, we're going to, you can be a guy now by pinning Cody Rhodes. And so let's see if
pinned Cody Rhodes.
It has been Roman, Drew McIntyre, The Rock, and one other person.
Lesnar beat him, but not.
Oh, yeah, Lesnar. Lesnar's the only other person to beat him.
Yeah.
So that's 5 people, and 4 out of those 5 are guaranteed Hall of Famers. So that's a very rarefied air that Solo's.
Yeah. Solo's got some climbing to do before that.
I've really enjoyed his new character, because when Roman was head of the table, it was like he was a mob boss. He's going to let everybody else do his dirty work, only get his hands dirty when it's necessary. While Solo is, I don't give a shit, I will get my hands dirty, and I will kill anybody who messes with my family. Like, as soon as Paul Heyman said it, you are not my tribal chief, he didn't even hesitate. It was bam, 2 seconds later he spiked him, So
Yeah.
let's see what they go with. I don't think Solo's winning that match. I would be very surprised if he was. Maybe it's a DQ win and he gets the dub that way, which you don't want to see at a SummerSlam.
No. We don't need another reason to hate Solo. Honestly, you can't do that.
But let's see what happens. This, like I said at the beginning, this is a very, very good show. You can make a case for it being best of the year based on how this was building to the next pay-per-view. And that's the biggest thing with Money in the Bank and the Money in the Bank concept, is that it's a ladder match, but there's a year's worth of storytelling that you go with it. Of course, one of those stories ended as quick as it started with Drew McIntyre, but I think everything storyline-wise that they added on pay-per-view is just, I'm excited for SummerSlam.
And beyond that too. I mean, like, even like just not even just Solo or Jacob as individual competitors, but like the new Bloodline as a whole. I feel like when we're talking about going into the future, like the Bloodline Civil War being renewed and this all-out brawl that's going to be happening in the future, whenever that happens to happen, War Games, hopefully. But I feel like this instills a lot of confidence in people that like this new Bloodline is legit and they can function as a unit, and they got like this drive to just destroy and to like, push people's shit and just establish themselves as the dominant force in the company. So it'll be really interesting to see like how Roman responds to Solo being the new tribal chief, and then having that support rally around Roman to combat this new Bloodline. That's all going to be really, really fun to watch.
All right, so that was the show. Briefly, I guess we can just really quickly before we close out, we can talk about the one notable thing in the post. Well, there's a few notable things in the post show, but the one thing that's actually relevant for storytelling was Drew McIntyre losing it not during the scrum, but during the post show with Jackie Redmond
panel.
The panel, yeah, and inevitably hit Adam Pierce and is now suspended indefinitely.
Did they announce he's suspended, or?
Yeah, that was on Twitter today. He's X. Sorry, he's suspended indefinitely.
Well, how can he suspend him when Drew quit? Are we just forgetting about that now too?
Well,
did they revisit that? Did they revisit Drew quitting and then suddenly killing CM Punk, and now all of a sudden we're good again?
It's
I
when he had the promo where he came through the crowd like, "Well, I'm gonna bank now that I don't got to deal with CM Punk."
Yeah, he made that when he, the Monday, the Raw afterwards, after the Punk attack, he made reference to it. Briefly,
but there was no like, well, I guess they didn't exactly like tear up a contract or anything like that, but I always thought that was funny. I was just like, oh yeah, well, that'll be interesting to see how that goes too, because I mean, maybe that gives Seth room to breathe then. You know, if Drew is
you could do
suspended.
if they keep Drew off of SummerSlam, they could do Seth CM Punk. I mean, that's a hot enough match for CM Punk to come back to.
Oh man, God forbid Punk gets injured again though. Like, do you really want to miss out on that match now? Oh,
so not be on. No, and he will never take those extra vitamins, so his body's probably not. Or the Randy Orton, he may not be. His body may not be as strong compared to these other people, but I think when he was in his last run with AEW, he was wrestling every week for 3-4 months and nothing happened. So let's see what happens. As for post show, I mean, Drew can make the argument, well, CM Punk and interfering in my matches, this, that, and the other thing. The one thing is that he did not hit an official, and Adam Pierce, as an official, has been kind of pathetic compared to Nick Aldis. This is, it's an understandable suspension, kayfabe. So,
I guess one more thing I have a little bit of a beef with that I didn't watch the post show scrum or anything like that, but I'm really getting tired of these guys asking wrestlers about Vince McMahon. I am so tired of these media people asking wrestlers about Vince. Like, Vince has been removed from the company. They're not going to outright say anything bad. Like, I don't want to say move on because what he's done is terrible and he deserves to face the music when that time comes. But, like, these guys have nothing to do with it.
I'll respect him for the guy saying it for Cena because, I mean, Cena was a Vince guy. So maybe him saying, I appreciate Vince for what he did in my whatever. But him asking about a federal investigation McMahon part of and asking if WWE is helping with that investigation, that's the dumbest fucking question that guy could have asked.
No. He asked Triple H too, right?
He has Cena and Triple H.
Asking questions about his retirement, for God's sake. Like, a legend is retiring, and your question is about something that is completely irrelevant.
About a piece of shit pervert that's been out of the company for 6 months now.
Yep. I don't want to hear another damn question about Vince at these shows, man. Like, I'm so fed up with it. But I
Let
had to
him
get
be
that
in
off my
Connecticut getting investigated by the feds with his weird pencil mustache. Just let it be. Let it lie.
I appreciate you guys letting me get that little vent out there, because
Oh no. I'm sure we'll all have our tangents in the show eventually.
all right, guys. We're at the end of the show here, just about. So I guess we can give our overall. We want to do a rating here. How do we want to do this? We had to talk about doing letters. We had to talk about doing numbers.
We
What feels
definitely
right
should
to you
not do
guys?
star ratings.
No, that's not happening.
We're not industry shills.
No.
I like letter grades. That's just me.
All right, let's do the letters. Overall, how do you feel? Where are you at? How was Money in the Bank?
I would put it at an A-. I think everything delivered where it needed to, and the minus is really for those couple of botches. And for me and Brandon, there were some very iffy audio botches at the pre-show.
Yeah. I guess I'm closer to the B too. I think for storytelling elements, it was a great show. I think for an actual match quality, I think it was just okay. I don't think any of the matches were truly like great. I think we had three of the 5 matches where notable botches, which is tough to really say they're great matches when you have, especially one as crippling as the Damien and Seth one. Like, and then the other ones, it's like I don't like nagging on botches too much, but it was a bit of a sloppy show all around, I feel. and there was no like real wow bell to bell. I think the match of the weekend so far was the tag team match at the end of SmackDown. Like I think that match was probably better than the other matches on Money in the Bank, which is maybe not where you want to be, but yeah, I still feel like 6 or 7 could be doable, but they really want to fill that time with like the extra promo work and letting the matches breathe and stuff like that, which is okay. Um, yeah, sorry guys. Netflix soon. Boys, I got to hit up Heat Wave. I'm going to that show tonight too, so I think the first match starts in just over an hour. Always appreciate chatting with you guys, and we're definitely going to be doing this for SummerSlam. And let's maybe we'll talk about getting some shows in between. I think that idea of having a John Cena related show would be a good one to have. Maybe we try and get into a bit more of a weekly or bi-weekly flow to get us through some of the news and happenings and stuff, and then hit up the big PLEs too. So sounds good. Sounds good, boys. Thanks, boys. Yes, sir, boys. I'll catch y'all later, eh?